What do you think of when I say babies? Little fingers and toes, happy gurgles and giggles? But we have been sold the story that the most innocent members of our society are stealing our freedom.
This sets the tone for one of Classically Abby's recent videos titled, "If You Care About Women, Be Pro-Life. It's Time to Fight for Motherhood and Our Most Vulnerable." Yes, that's kinda a long-winded title for a video, but I've come to realize that that's pretty standard for Classically Abby. She opens, not with any logical argument, but with an emotional appeal. This makes it clear that the main driving force of this video isn't any sound arguments that will be given, just damn emotional appeal. Yes, babies can very often be adorable, but that is of limited relevance. Babies need proper infant care, proper medical care, and other things that the recently born just simply need. And these needs, as well as the right to have these needs met, would still be just as serious, even if they were not so very, very, very cute. So the cuteness of babies would not be that relevant even if Abby's video was about the needs of the recently born. However, if you're at all familiar with Classically Abby, you probably already know that this video is about something else to which the cuteness of babies is even less relevant. More on that in just a moment. Hello, Internet. This is Sophia. Before the intro, I explained how the emotional appeal that Classically Abby went for in the opening of her very recent video was not really relevant, and that it would not be even if it were a video about the personal care, medical care, and other needs of the recently born. However, if you are at all familiar with Classically Abby, then you have probably already figured out that that video of hers is not about any such thing. And for those who are not familiar with her, it will become clear what that video really is about when I play what comes right after that opening clip.
Mothers everywhere have been told to turn on the children growing within their wombs and have been guided to take their lives.
That's right. Her video is not about the recently born, but about the not yet born. She opens with an appeal based on the cuteness and adorableness of infants and tries to go from that to make assertions about how we should approach fetuses, and not just fetuses, but embryos and even blastulas. Seriously, little fingers and toes? Happy gurgles and giggles? Do you really think that any of those things are characteristic of a blastula? Granted, I explained how the cuteness of a baby is irrelevant, as it would still have to have its medical needs, its infant care needs, and so forth met, even if it were not so cute. So I can't just do an about face and suggest that the fact that a blastula doesn't have those traits suddenly does matter. But I am not trying to do that. I am merely pointing out a second count on which Abby's emotional appeal lacks relevance. You see, in addition to the fact that Abby's emotional appeal about babies are beside the point because cuteness does not matter, there is also the fact that it isn't relevant because her video isn't even about infants. Granted, she refers to them a lot as babies and asserts a lot that they are babies, But sorry, Abby, you're asserting that does not make it so. And if we are to justify having laws that require people with uteri to undergo the enormous imposition on their bodies that pregnancy entails against their will based on that, then we sure as need a lot more than your assertions. But do you offer the kind of rock-solid argument that we need to justify this?
The pro-choice movement will tell you that it doesn't look like a baby, but it already has a separate and distinct DNA from its mother.
That's it? Seriously? Your big argument that a blastula should be given the rights of personhood is that it has a separate DNA from its mother? Are you saying that having a unique and distinct DNA is what makes you an individual person? Well, if you are saying that, then I suggest that anyone who is an identical twin, or beyond that, an identical triplet, be very careful when you are around, because if you accept that argument, then when you kill one identical twin and leave the other alone, that isn't murder, but just injuring someone. Granted, to your credit, I don't think that you see the lives of identical twins as being that cheap. If you were actually confronted with this, you would probably just say, "Oh, that's totally different," or something like that. However, if you do that, then you are committing a fallacy known as special pleading, unless you explain how exactly that is totally different. Somehow I doubt that you will be able to do that. My solution, though, accept that having a unique DNA is not what makes someone an individual person. This way, identical twins, triplets, and even quadruplets are fully protected once they pass the threshold from fetushood to infancy, which happens at the moment of birth. Blastulas, on the other hand, not so much. And unfortunately, the iterations of this argument and other equally weak arguments, as well as other arguments that rely on the conclusions of such arguments as premises, are the only times in this video that you even pretend to provide a rational argument. Aside from that, this video is nothing but emotional appeal. And since this argument itself fails, any argument that relies upon it also fails.
The pro-choice movement will tell you it doesn't look like a baby, but its heartbeat has already begun.
As for it not looking like a baby, you shouldn't need me to tell you that. I mean, just take a look at this model of a human embryo at not 3, but 5 weeks. You don't need me to tell you what it does or it doesn't look like, because you should be able to figure it out for your own self whether or not this looks like a baby. But that's beside the point, because the fact that it doesn't look like a baby is in no way part of the reason why we shouldn't have laws giving it the rights of personhood. The reason why we shouldn't have laws giving it the rights of personhood at the expense of the bodily autonomy of people with uteri is because the burden of proof of that assertion simply is not met. None of the arguments that Abby makes here why we should give it the rights of personhood stand up to even the slightest scrutiny. And for that matter, neither have any of the arguments that anyone has made anywhere. And as I stated, considering what an imposition being required to carry a pregnancy to term can be on some people with uteri, you need to have a really strong case to justify having laws that would make such an imposition. Mere assertions and weak as arguments just won't do. I already explained what chilling ramifications it would have if we were to accept the notion that having a unique DNA was what defines someone as an individual person. As for the presence of a heartbeat, well, from what I have gathered on an admittedly quick and hasty Google search, that's at 5 weeks, not 3. But for argument's sake, let's grant her this point. Having a heartbeat is indeed a process by which to sustain life. But how do we leap from that to the conclusion that having a heartbeat is what defines someone as a person entitled to having laws on the book protecting them? Do you have any reason that is strong enough to warrant having laws on the books protecting them at the expense of the bodily autonomy of people with uteri? Somehow, I doubt it.
The pro-choice movement will tell you it doesn't look like a baby, but it is one.
So you say that it is a baby, but so far you've offered nothing of substance to back up that claim. People with uteri should not have their bodily autonomy compromised solely on the basis of unsubstantiated assertions. By the way, you may have noticed a number of times in this video that I have said people with uteri rather than women. The reason for this is that while most people who have uteri are in fact women, that is far from being all people with uteri. There are plenty of transgender and/or intersex men out there who have uteri too. And this is one thing that I am at least hoping that Abby won't argue with me on, given her background, seeing as the traditional Jewish understanding of gender is far more nuanced than the traditional evangelical Christian understanding. Then again, who knows? Now, she may have a video out there that I haven't yet seen, and/or she may release one in the future that either dashes or affirms that hope, but until I know for a fact one way or the other, I will give her the benefit of the doubt that at least on this point, she would not argue with me.
As a young woman in 2020, you've been told that pregnancy is hard.
So, Abby, is it wrong to tell women that?
Pregnancy can be difficult. Tearing a baby from the warmth of its mother's womb in pieces is worse.
Okay, so you admit that pregnancy can be hard, but as for your assertion that abortion constitutes tearing a baby from the warmth of its mother's womb, that, once again, is your assertion, and you have not backed it up.
Just because a baby in the womb can't speak for itself doesn't mean we have the right to take its life before it's born.
You are right on one point. Just because it can't speak for itself does not mean that we have the right to terminate it. The reason why the person whose uterus it is in has the right to have it removed, even if that does mean terminating it, has nothing to do with its inability to speak for itself. What it is tied to is the fact that every one of the arguments that you have provided, and for that matter, any argument that anyone has provided for why it should be treated as a person and protected as such, falls completely flat. Again, requiring someone to carry a pregnancy to term against their will can be a huge imposition on the bodily autonomy of people who have uteri. And you are wanting laws that would do exactly that based on nothing but your assertions and some of the most flawed arguments imaginable. Oh, and I mustn't forget, you're also trying to justify it with emotional appeal. that is boosted by that nice piano music. That too.
And babies do feel pain, at the latest by 20 weeks, but some studies show as early as 12 weeks.
You do hear that a lot as a conservative talking point, but is there any substance to that claim? Well, an article on that specific claim on factcheck.org says up front the following about this claim. This is a complicated and controversial topic in science, but the ability to feel pain at that specific point in gestation is unproven. So once again, you are using something that is unproven to justify a ginormous imposition on the bodily autonomy of people with uteri. By the way, in case anyone in my audience wants to read that full article, I will provide a link to it in the video description area for this response video that you are presently watching on YouTube.
Today, women are misled into choosing their desires over the very lives of their unborn children, to lead a life constantly pursuing pleasure after pleasure as they constantly grow more and more fleeting, to live in the perpetual present with no meaning in sight, and to sacrifice the inestimable value of human life for empty freedom.
Now, this is a very unfair way to categorize people who make the truly difficult choice to have an abortion. What you characterize as the pursuit of pleasure after fleeting pleasure can be all kinds of things, such as not having their dream of getting a higher education dashed, or having another dream that they have worked tirelessly for torn from them like that, such as not getting kicked out of their house, or even not being trapped in a abusive relationship. It is bad enough that you would take away from these people their means of escape such grim predicaments on the basis of an assertion backed by nothing but some of the most flawed arguments at best, but to characterize them as just pursuing pleasure after fleeting pleasure? How dare you? You should be ashamed of yourself. Anywho, I have not reached the bottom of the rabbit hole of the fallacies and, in some cases, blatant inaccuracies that Abby uses to justify her anti-abortion case. But frankly, I think that this response of mine is already edging on being too long as is, and responding to every bad point she makes would make it even longer. But even though I haven't answered everything she says, I have given you the highlights. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Please hit the thumbs up button and leave your comment in the comments area below. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel and that the bell icon is active so as to increase the chance that you will be notified when I upload new videos to this channel in the future. Share this video with your friends and everyone else, whether by social media or by whatever other means. And until next time, see ya!